Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this evening. I would like to express my gratitude to all of you. Before we begin this session, we would like to acknowledge that Two Rivers Gallery is gratefully located on the traditional unceded territory of Little Tenney. As the only venue outside of the United States, we have been hosting Marking Time Art in Time of Mass Incarceration at Two Rivers Gallery from April 26th to October 6th. Debuted on MoMa PS1 in September 2020, this traveling exhibition concluded its tour in Prince George at Two Rivers Gallery with the presentation of works by 28 artists and more than 100 pieces. This is the largest exhibition we have ever hosted at Two Rivers Gallery. This presentation at Two Rivers Gallery and the Robert Frederick Gallery at the University of Northern British Columbia has been organized in collaboration with the Marking Time team, including Dr. Nicole Fleetwood and Stephen Fulwood. We are thrilled to have Dr. Nicole Fleetwood with us tonight for this talk. Marking Time is the result of a decade of research by Dr. Fleetwood. She is the author of the award-winning book, Marking Time, Art in Age of Mass Incarceration, Harvard University Press 2020, and is also a curator of this traveling exhibition. Marking Time was listed as one of the most important art moments in 2020 by the New York Times and among the best shows of the year by the New Yorker and Hyperallergic. The works of artists in this show reveal how punitive governance, predatory policing, surveillance, and mass imprisonment impact millions of people in the United States. This exhibition gives us opportunity to turn a lens on the Canadian context. As a part of a series of programs related to this exhibition, we're happy tonight to host 3 artists from this exhibition. This session will be followed by a talk by artists, and we will have question and answer at the end of this session. This event will be recorded and will be available on the Two Rivers Gallery Facebook page. Please ask your questions through Facebook chat box. I'd like to invite Dr. Nicole Fleetwood to talk about this project and introduce the artist. Nicole? Thank you, Nicole, for joining us today.
Hi, good evening. I'm here in New York. It's 10:30 here. I'm happy to be in community. I'm just going to say, a greeting. Stephen is actually going to do the introductions of the artists, but I just wanted to thank Two Rivers Gallery for inviting us to bring Marking Time to Canada and seeing its connection to issues around punitive captivity of Indigenous communities in Canada and other settler colonial states, for being willing and very, willing to do a deep dive study into the U.S. context and to collaborate in very generous and thoughtful ways with the Marking Time team. We were saying before we went live on Facebook that you all are a small team and you're doing incredible work. So I want to commend Two Rivers Gallery on what you're doing in the community of Prince George, a hyper-incarcerated community. I visited in the spring, and it was a really big lesson to me in how widespread carcerality is as a system of punishment and containment for marginalized populations. Thank you for the opportunity for us to continue to learn and grow this project, and also to grow and learn liberation strategies and ways of creating collaboration in the broadest sense. So I appreciate the opportunity of staying a lifelong student to how we collectively get free and create joy and foster creativity as part of that process. I'm happy, very, very happy to see 3 artists who inspire me and who have taught me a lot in this Zoom room. Thank you, James Yaya Hough, Ashley Hunt, and Gary Harrell for being here. I wish I was in person with you. I would love to feel the synergy of embodiment. But thank you all for being here in various time zones. So I'm going to pass it on to my collaborator in so many ways and friend and someone I, trust with, the work we do together politically and ethically, Stephen G. Fullwood. Thank you, Stephen, for doing so much to keep this project going. You're muted, Stephen. You seem impassioned, but you're muted. Can you all hear Stephen?
We can't hear you, Stephen. We still cannot hear the Stephen.
Everyone. Hello, I can hear you guys now. I'm not sure why. I've been unmuted for some time. And so thank you, Brianna. I want to say thank you, Nicole, for choosing me to partner with you on this really critical project. It has not only been transformative, but it has been a privilege and an honor to platform these amazing artists we're going to hear from tonight. The artists that are in attendance, Ashley Hunt, Gary Harrell, and James Yaya Hough, have been with the show since MoMa PS1 in September of 2020. I've had the opportunity to meet all of them, and I am just I'm grateful to be in a space where we can talk about justice in this way and how we get to that. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce the artists very briefly. Ashley Hunt is a filmmaker who is based in California. James Yaya Hough is an artist himself based in Pittsburgh, and Gary Harrell is based in California. They're going to tell you a little bit about themselves and about their art. And as Isan said, they'll have an opportunity to ask questions of them at the end of their talk. So without further ado, I'm going to go with James Yaya Hough first, and then we'll hear from the rest of the group. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm going to audio.
We lost Stephen again.
I think Stephen was passing it on to Yaya. Can
Yeah.
you hear?
Can you hear me, Yaya? Yes, I think you might be muted now, unfortunately. What is that?
James, we cannot hear you.
Is everything okay, James? You might want to check the volume on your computer or phone. That might be the issue. Anything yet?
I think you're good, James. Can you James, if you have a problem connection, can you, Stephen, ask Ashley to start?
Sure. Ashley Hunt. James, while you get your the audio worked out, we're going to move to Ashley Hunt. Ashley, oh, you're good? Okay. Okay, James is changing channels, and so he should be able to get on in just 1 second. Thank you, folks, for bearing with us as we work through our technical issues here. Please, just thank you so much.
Uh, James, can you talk?
Okay. Am I muted now?
Great. We got you.
All right, perfect. Okay. All right. First of all, I want to thank Two Rivers Gallery, for hosting Marking Time and also doing all the great exhibitions and work you guys have been doing. Really respect and honor your commitment to the principles you stand for, particularly in the art space. Um, I want to also thank Dr. Nicole Fleetwood as well, for launching Marking Time, uh, and doing all the great work she's been doing as well, spreading this knowledge, and exposing, the creativity of folks from the carceral space. Just to put that shortly. Um, Definitely Dr. Stephen G. Fullwood. The archival project is amazing. And there's a ton of work to be done in that space, but you guys have been doing amazing work as well. Also want to thank my co-participants, Mr. Harrell, Brother Gary, and Mr. Hunt, Brother Ashley. Want to thank you guys. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you guys in person. I've met a ton of the other marking artists, but I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you two brothers in person. But I hope that will avail itself in the very near future. So a little bit about me. I'm James Yaya Hough. I'm a contemporary fine artist. I was incarcerated for approximately 27 years and some months, for a crime that was committed while I was a juvenile. My case as a juvenile came under the watershed court decision from the United States Supreme Court known as Montgomery versus Alabama. And through that decision, I was able to, petition through the courts for release. And fortunately, in that process, I was able to be released and return back to society and to my family and, to restart my life and to begin to continue the process of transformation, personal transformation, but also social transformation, to begin to impact my community and impact others around me in the most positive of ways. Throughout that process, art has been a consistent lifeline, not just the creative process of making art, because throughout my incarceration, I was making contemporary fine art at what I would consider the highest level, that would rival whatever was in any gallery, in the United States or probably internationally. But along with that, I was creating a social practice of community building while incarcerated. I began to understand that I was part of a lineage and a tradition that, paired art with not only social justice, but community building. Um, Art in and of itself is beautiful. It can be, very rewarding. It can be lucrative. There's a whole world of art, right? But no matter how big the art world is, there's a society, that exists, much larger than the art world. And, art is important and art influences the world and art impacts the world and art has a transformative power of change for the world. But community building has to be done, like social justice has to be participated in. So I've always considered myself, an artist at heart, but also an activist and a community builder, and I spent, just as much time perfecting, my craft, as an artist, and aesthetically, I put just as much time into building relationships with people, starting organizations within prisons, connecting with people through the outside, because that work was just as important, if not more so important to me, was just as important. The art has always been like, the cherry on top, and, what that did also throughout that 27 years, that informed me of, what I would be doing when I re-entered society. I didn't know when I would re-enter society. I always hoped and dreamed and prayed, but when I re-entered society, I didn't just want to be an artist as well. I wanted to be an impactful artist that created projects that assisted the community in developing and re-strengthening the bonds within community, and also, forming a practice around that while, learning from other artists who've done the same thing, over time, informing my practice, but also creating possibly new methods to community build and ignite change through art, and community building and activism. So, that's been the bulk of what my goals have been as an artist. And to be blunt, I've learned a lot from Dr. Fleet. You know, with the interactions I've had with Dr. Fleetwood, I've been able to see, the power of pairing the written word and community and art. You know what I mean? And how powerful that is, when you bring people together, with those sort of that triptych of things, how powerful that is, uh, recently, what I've been able to do is I've had the privilege, the honor, and the pleasure of to be able to execute several public art projects. Namely, a project I did with the 58th International, the Carnegie International in Pittsburgh. The Carnegie Museum of Art, they hold the International. They did the 58th installment. They invited me to participate. What I wanted to do, they said you can do whatever you want, but what I wanted to do was, again, community-based mural. And I was fortunate enough to execute a community-based mural within the community that I was born and raised in. And when I say community-based, what I mean is that throughout every process of the to executing the mural, the community was involved. And so so let's look at concentric circles of community. Number one, my immediate family and friends, right? The people closest to me, they were involved. Number two, the larger community of the neighborhood and the city. And number three, input from friends and community members around the nation who also are stakeholders as well. What I was able to do was hold several workshops where we, fed people, we invited people in, and we would have between 50 to 75 participants for each workshop. We would hold discussions, and then we would also have a creative making session. So people were able to take materials and create works, and those works will be fused into the final outcome of the project, into the final design. So throughout that process, what I saw was people getting to know each other, people getting to transfer information and knowledge between the young and the old. Our participant base was everyone from seniors all the way down to literally babies. So, that was exciting to me to see a wide range of community participation. And in that process, people learned a lot about their community. They learned that they became stakeholders. They became empowered, to use that word. They became part of the project, and they felt that they had a stake in it. It was no longer a Carnegie Museum of Art, not to diminish the museum's support and input, but it was no longer a museum guided or museum supported project. It was a community, truly a community based project led by an artist, but also, when I say led, like with a lowercase L, it was led, but it was also driven by the participants. And so with the execution and completion of that project, titled A Gift to the Hill District, located in Pittsburgh, that mural still stands today. One of the things I'm most proudest of is that a lot of the projects that happened during the internationals in Pittsburgh through the Carnegie Museum of Art, they are ephemeral. They come and they go, and they also take place within the confines of the museum. What, my goal was to create a project that would be sustainable, long-lasting, community-based, community-driven, but also would be something that would stand the test of quote unquote time and remain, as a symbol, as something that was visible beyond the lifespan of the international. And so, I think that was achieved as well. And so that really, like personally, it fills me with a lot of pride. And the fact that it remains in the community and it holds value, not only in a material sense, but it holds value in a sense of, people who participated, but also people who weren't able to participate, community members who weren't able to participate, they feel ownership of that work. That work is no longer mine. That work belongs to the community, and that work belongs to them, the participants. So, if anything, that truly embodies like the sense of, or the totality of like where I stand in my practice as an artist. And so, in addition to that, I was able to execute another public art project with the assistance of Art for Justice, the Ford Foundation, and I'm going to forget somebody, but they're going to be mad. But
Battery Park.
Oh, Battery Park City Authority. Yes, yes, my lovely friends there, Abigail. Yes, you know that project. When I say contemporary fine art, that project represents more in that vein. And what I was able to do in that project was, take, in a sense, some of what I talked about in the international project, the mural, as far as with marking time and as far as what Art for Justice goals, is to create a project that would also be long lasting, have some permanence, and sort of remain as evidence of all the great work that has taken place. And so that was one of my goals as well in that project. But what the project of its in and of itself was to create, a public art project that would symbolize not only just mass incarceration in and of itself, but sort of like tell a story of justice, right? And its impact, right? And so with that sort of broad brush, or given that sort of broad sort of concept, what I did was create a triptych of three spherical or circular mosaic pieces, right? Encased in marine gray steel, three mosaic tile and glass pieces. And what those pieces do is, in a non-linear way, they sort of tell the story of America or U.S. Justice, right? From a conceptual, but also a historical vantage point. And again, it leans, in my opinion, that triptych leans more toward the contemporary fine art approach, and it didn't really involve as much community input or participation. But at the same time, what I had to do to inform that work was lean more towards, historical knowledge, research, and those, like those type of informations to sort of process through and transmit through into the work. So, that work, I wish I would have been able to approach it in that way, as well as the mural project. But, I feel like, it wasn't, in a sense, I couldn't, because the goals were different, in a sense, as opposed to the mural project, which had a more organic feel to it. The project that exists in Lower Manhattan, Battery Park, that project, which is titled, excuse me, Justice Reflected. I'm stepping on the title, but Justice Reflected. That work is more created in the sense of a monument, you know, or a marker, you know what I mean? And so, you know, with that sense, it's sort of, you know, there's a sort of process that generally informs that type of work. And I think I leaned heavily into that process. It would have been interesting to see what a community-based process would have evolved into work-wise, you know. But with that said, you know, if there's any questions, I'll take some questions, or, you know, I'll stop rambling a little bit.
Thank you, James. I really appreciate listening to you and hear you talk about your work. And can everyone hear me, by the way?
Yes.
This is great. And so thank you. We hopefully we'll have some questions for you once everyone gives a presentation. I'd like to invite Ashley Hunt on to talk a little bit about himself and his work. And I believe he has some work to share with us as well. So Ashley, the floor is yours.
Cool. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, everybody, for inviting me to be a part of this. It's really great it's an honor to get to talk alongside Yaya and Gary about our work together. And always great to be in conversation with you guys. And as always, thank you, Nicole, for getting us together and including me in the marking time. I kind of think of it as an art world in a way. Like I would always try to teach my students that there's not one art world, there's many art worlds. And I really feel that, Nicole, you helped organize one. And that I really appreciate that. And thank you, of course, to Two Rivers. I'm really glad to get to show the work that I got to make. I was invited to make for Marking Time in British Columbia and in Canada. So I've got some slides that I'm going to share. That works for everybody? Okay. Is that coming up?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So I did an interview with somebody recently I'm going to end at a new piece I'm working on right now. And I did an interview with the amazing scholar, Juliet Hooker, about a month ago. And one of the things that she talked about was how there, in the kind of 1980s and 90s, there was a sense that there wasn't any activism in relation going on in the world in relation to what had been going on in the 60s and 70s with the Black Power and other people's movements and so forth. And that she felt that was really inaccurate and that was not true. And because what was taking place at that time was the beginning of the movement against mass incarceration. And so I've been returning to this image, and sorry for everybody who's on the Marking Time side if I've been showing this image too much, but this is an image that I keep going back to in the last few years. It's from the Critical Resistance South Conference in 2003. It was the third conference of critical resistance around the US, where formerly incarcerated folks, activists, teachers, scholars, artists, community members were coming together to talk about this thing that was haunting and affecting so many people's lives, but without as many kind of common ways to be in the same place talking about it, unless you were the person who was supporting a number of people inside somewhere and so forth. And so this is the opening plenary of that conference. The red shirt that you can see the back of underneath the basketball hoop there, that's me on a camera there. I was helping to document that and show a piece for that first night. And this is back when I was first doing I was finding a place for my own artwork as an artist within this movement, and not just thinking about how as an artist can I make propaganda for this movement, but how how also is this an audience, and how also does our work kind of bind this audience together and help to bring common language and make common spaces and help choreograph us towards towards the future that we want to see. So I'm just going to start here, and I'm going to show just a couple of quick images of the documentary work that kind of got invited me that got me invited into this conversation in the first place. These are a bunch of people who I kind of brought into, invited into conversation with my first film, my first documentary, feature documentary in 2000 that I finished in 2001 called Corrections. There's a number of amazing people who this film was just kind of like a conversation with all these folks, including amazing scholars and activists like Ruthie Gilmore, and Judy Green, and the late amazing Rose Braz, as well as like, and some other people who aren't as well known but are really important. And from this work, I got kind of invited to screen this, as I got invited to screen this in kind of grassroots context around the country, which became a really important context for me. I also got invited to make new pieces with those different communities. And so these are some quick screen grabs from pieces I did around alongside the campaign to shut down a juvenile prison in northern Louisiana, in Tallulah, Louisiana. And then also following up with some of those same community members in 2004 and 5 around the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and the Orleans Parish Prison, which the city had refused to evacuate, and where people were left to drown in their cells. A couple of amazing elders who are no longer with us that I always like to honor in this work, Althea Francois and Curtis Muhammad, who were I learned so much from, and were very generous and both as organizers and that many of us learned a lot from. And then on the bottom, left and middle are images from a series of work I did in Mississippi with some of the folks who I originally met when making Corrections, where they were, this was kind of a piece we made as a part of their effort to close down a couple of the youth boot camps where kids were being just brutalized by the state. And it was really kind of amazing to see how media could be a part of that. And this was kind of before the internet became, and cell phone videos and stuff became such a popular way to share our work. And it was a huge thing to just kind of go down there, go and interview a bunch of people. I had like, not even a week to just interview people, make a short piece, and then go show this piece as a part of these hearings they had in the legislative hearing in Jackson, Mississippi, in the Capitol. And it was incredible to see how important the media aspect of that was. These pieces all became a part of this Corrections documentary project that kind of became this larger world of works that followed Corrections. Also included this kind of mapping project that I started to make, that kind of like thinking about what do I do with all the surplus information and testimony that people share with me, and ideas and teaching that people share that doesn't fit into a documentary. And I started making these prison maps at the time too, that became a kind of interesting popular education tool. And it's always interesting to visit some organization, some grassroots organization, and you kind of see these on the wall somewhere, kind of all dusty in the back room or something, and know it was used at some point. And then I'm showing you, this is just this is about 10 years, no, I guess about 5 years later, 5 to 10 years later, a work that I started to make that is where I arrived at the jumping off point for what I wound up making for Marking Time. And this is an installation of Degrees of Visibility, which I developed between 2010 and 2020. This is an installation at the Alabama Contemporary and in Mobile, Alabama. And this is a piece that documents, I mean, it's always been an interesting question for me is how do you make a representation of something that you cannot see in one image, like mass incarceration or like the prison industrial complex. There's no single image that can show you what that is. And so you either have to use kind of metaphor or you have to use strategies that kind of push you beyond the frame of the image, bring in other elements to try to just, ultimately fail at showing what that system is, but at least have that failure be a worthwhile attempt that gets a good conversation started. So this piece involves over 260 images of prisons, jails, and detention centers throughout all 50 states of the U.S. and U.S. territories or colonies. And each of the images is documenting a prison, jail, or detention center, the landscape around it in which it sits, but also kind of engaging how it's concealed. And a part of this work and its visual research, I've kind of came to think about how camouflage of carceral institutions and carceral spaces have been an integral part of allowing the prison industrial complex to expand to the scale that it has, which is very different from the beginning of modern prisons that were very about their visibility. This is about documenting how they've been made more and more invisible. And this is an image that's kind of the coda or the kind of point of departure from this piece. And this is an image of the old Atlanta prison farm just outside of Atlanta in Georgia. And when I was documenting this one, I was trying to think how this would relate to the other pieces in the series, because all the other pieces, every single landscape in which you do or don't see a prison, is titled according to the number of people who are locked up and held unfree in that space. And I was trying to think, well, how would this one fit if this one's empty? And then as I started to sit with this image more, I started to realize how this space is not empty by any means, and that it's actually filled with this really kind of abundant, thriving, fugitive life that was not authorized by the carceral system or its administration, and is actually kind of feeding off the decay of that carceral architecture and its remains. And so this in a way became, while the rest of the project was documenting the kind of growth of that system and its kind of, I don't know, the viral quality of its spreading, this led me start to think about what happens if we start to picture the future in which that system ends and breaks down. And so when I got to talk with Nicole about what I might make for marking time, we talked about how another piece might take up a closing prison or a closed prison as a starting point. Nicole said, well, there's Rikers very close to from PS1 MoMA. And so that led to Ashes, where I got to do a number of interviews with some amazing activists and organizers who were a part of the No New Jails campaign, which kind of brought an abolitionist framework to the demands for closing Rikers and move it from just a strictly reformist conversation to an more abolitionist one. And with those conversations, I tried to work visually. I documented Rikers I documented 5 different points on the coastline around the Upper East River that surround Rikers, trying to document the kind of wild areas where the kind of flora and fauna that would be thriving on Rikers Island if it was to become a ruin, to see what they already look like and to imagine them taking over. And so in a way, visually, it was a kind of attempt to erase Rikers and from 5 different perspectives around the Upper East River, while having a kind of narrative soundtrack, one that I wrote that kind of speaks from a future standpoint in which that looks back at when Rikers was covered in cages, and to think about the history that led up to it, and then with these different organizers and activists, to ask them what they imagine growing up from the ashes of Rikers once it's closed. And then so that's the piece that's been a part of Marking Time. It's been incredible to just get to see this move around with Marking Time, to be able to see it in person in a few different of the installations, and then also get to hear from people I know in the world who've gone to see the show and send me a picture of it or something like that. Because this opened during COVID, right? So we didn't get to see the show at first, and so that's also been a really interesting aspect of this. So just quickly, here's a couple of different images that have to do with this. The title Ashes, Ashes actually comes from the fact that on the right, and you see 1904, this kind of backwards timeline, you see the shape of the original actual geographic footprint or geologic footprint of Rikers Island, and what actually fills that space on either side of it to give it the footprint that it has today are ashes of basically trash and industrial waste, and of early 20th century, late 19th century, early 20th century New York, that was used as landfill to expand the footprint of the island, including from the labor of imprisoned people, to expand it in this larger island. And this was a free newspaper that we were able to put together, and is still available on the MoMa website, which has some of the narration that's kind of like a libretto for Ashes, Ashes, and then it has a follow-up interview that I did with Ruth Wilson Gilmore, about sort of like carcerality and COVID. Has this had kind of come in to be determining our lives at that time? Following that, I was invited to join another show that was called Undoing Time at the ASU Art Museum in Phoenix, just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. And I tried to think, okay, what's another prison that's closing down here? And the Florence, one of the corrections, the state prison in Florence, Arizona, in between Phoenix and Tucson, was in the process of being closed. And so I did a follow-up to Ashes, Ashes that also has a historical piece that thinks about the kind of carceral movement of Western expansion after the Civil War, both with its weapons and its military capacity, but also its photographic capacity, representing the West as a kind of empty space ready for settlement, and erasing the people who live there. And so this one also erases visually the Florence prison, and then also has interviews with a number of with people from an amazing group called Mass Liberation Arizona in Phoenix, which is largely kind of an abolitionist voting rights organization that has been really amazing. And Double Time, it kind of starts with the question of what does it mean to hold two times together, and trying to hold different points from the past together with the present, and what does it mean to look at them together. So this is these kind of older Southwest ruins with the same prison before, when it was modeled on this kind of like colonial mission style architecture and so forth. And these are some other images from that piece. And this is from a still from the current piece that is now the third in this film cycle that takes closed and closing prisons as their starting points. And as I've been thinking about it, some of the important things that I learned from abolitionist organizers and teachers that I've had the privilege to work with has been to think about a closing prison not just as a kind of ending point of our organizing and activism, but actually to see it as what happens if we look at it as the starting point. That closure is the starting point for the world that comes next. And so I have a short. Do I have time to do this? A short trailer for the film.
Very shortly, please. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. Oops. I have to redo the screen. Finally, maybe look around, take a look at there.
Only maybe like 5 white guys, and the rest of us all black. From 18 to 22 is when they were sending you over here. And it's built on top of a toxic waste dump. This place stunk. You could smell the hogs, pigs, all the trash, the stuff they put over there, man. It was just terrible.
I'll stop there because I don't want to take too much time. But if anybody wants to go see that, the title of the piece is and Water Brings Tomorrow. And it's the third in that film cycle. And it looks at different prisons that have been closed around the country, what's been going on with them, and starting screenings with them with different among different campaigns to close more prisons, to keep prisons closed, and stop prisons, new ones from being built. And we're looking for people who want to screen in their community and so forth. So please feel free to reach out. It's just that andwaterbringstomorrow.com is the website, and you can contact us through there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Really appreciate your contribution. And now we have Gary Harrell, last but not least. So Gary, are you there? Gary Harrell? I believe you're muted at the moment. Brianna, are you able to unmute Gary? Oh, there you are. Gary?
You unmuted me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yes. Are you able to come online?
Okay.
You can hear you. Yes, sir.
Okay, because I was like, uh-oh, this is, it's like, you brothers have all made a wonderful presentation, and I appreciate your work and everything that you've done for art. And it's always a pleasure to see Dr. Nicole as well as yourself. Thank you very much for letting me be a part of change, because it's inevitable when you pursue something as hard as the doctor and yourself pursue it, there has to be change because people are listening and you're touching a lot of people. And the brother that spoke the first time,
James Yaya.
I said, it's a change. Son came on my phone. The brother's asked you to start the video, but and the brother that did the collaboration with the community, you know, because everything we do for murals is part of the community, and his presentation was awesome, and what he did to get to collaborate with the people, he fed them. When you feed people, they become more comfortable with you and they can tell you the truth because they're hungry. They want something to replace all this stuff that's going on in their life that we restoration affects everybody. And if
Gary, are you, excuse me for a moment, Gary, are you able to get on camera so we can see your wonderfulness? I see you there, but there's something sort of blocking us. Blocking the
I don't know how
the visual.
I was really unprepared, Steve. I called you a couple of times and I've said, what's happening? I couldn't get in contact with you. So we were out in eat, and then you called. So I just immediately said, hey, babe, I got to go because this is what I signed up for.
Hey,
and
no problem. Don't worry about it. We love what you are saying. So just keep going. No problem.
And everything is so awesome, and I'm like, wow. And that's what I'm receiving at this point in time. And to tell you a little bit about me, I don't want to talk too much because I know everybody has something to do with this late where you guys are at. And thank you for staying up to be part of this meaningful extravaganza. And what happened is,
thank you.
Right now, they elected me to be the director of Artwork Initiative. And what that entails is finding out when people's art is being used without their permission, or they're reproducing people's art, and they're getting ready to partner supposedly with somebody. I'm not going to put a whole bunch of names out there because I haven't seen the ink dry yet, you know? And being in that position, I'm like, why did you guys choose me? They say, man, why would we choose anybody else? Because we know you. This is a part of what we do, because I did 40 plus years in prison, and I could have done a lot of other things, but I did art and music. And as I travel today, I should have learned about computers too, because this technology has really, really left me behind. And I enrolled in a beginner's, one of these classes, computer classes, so I could get more familiar with this. And trying to teach somebody or learn something is difficult when you get older as I am, because you think you know everything and you don't. You're like, wow, what just happened? Okay, shut up, Gary, get out of the way. Get your ego out of the way. And that's what's happening with me right now. And then what happened is Crocker Museum came and purchased some of my art, and they put it up. I have people going down to see that now. And that's awesome. Knowing or thinking that I never would have been an artist in the event I hadn't been incarcerated, because it stopped. And you have to push pause and figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. And I learned how to help people. And I learned how to put my anxieties aside and the things that people are doing to me. But if I hadn't put myself in that position, they wouldn't have been able to do that to me. Because if I would have done like normal people, go to school, get an education, then get a job, a career, and family, that never would have happened to me. So the blaming part is over and accepting the reality that is. And you guys showed me that. It's always pursue the endeavor, moving forward. What can we do now to fix this situation? Because the past is the past and it happened, but I know that they remember you by the last thing that you've done, whatever that is, whether it's messed up or it's great. So I would prefer to be looked at the light of being a better person today than I was yesterday and continue to move forward. And you guys have allowed me that the opportunity. The right to return has been influential in my life. I met some people there, along with when we did go to Cincinnati and I met you, I met Key and Sandra. And about every other month, I get a phone call from them, and he's telling me, Gary, catalog your stuff, do this and do that. You gotta he's talking about a whole bunch of money. And I'm like, dude, man, I gotta work, man. I can't do all this stuff because I gotta pay a mortgage now, and I gotta. So that transition is where change comes in, and how are you gonna stand up to that? You know, because some people have a lot better than other people. Some people know other people, and they forward them opportunities that I don't have because I didn't receive that endorsement. Because I tell the truth, man. A lot of people don't like a truth teller, and if you don't, it's not me not liking you. It's me just like telling you what it is. You say, man, I don't like that. You know, so we have to deal with that also. And I'm learning to find a happy medium so I can walk down that street and be comfortable. Because you just disregarding your opinion for another man's opinion, like Trump the other day, the debate, I'm like, what just happened? Why did he do that? And that's not changing the topic. That's right on topic because he is a criminal. And then they're talking about voting for him again. I'm like, how could they be? They should have got somebody. These are the kind of thoughts that I be having. And I'm saying, if that, you, me, us would have done that, what would have happened? Okay, then we got the steamroller. And Dr. Nicole gave Henry Franks some money, a grant, excuse me, and we participated in that and made it. So we had a misprint, right? I took that and I did pointillism to it. And if I had to say so myself, it looks great. And I'm laying to show the world. I just showed a few people, and they want to see it because that, like that blur that you see in me, it's the only way I know how to get it. It's just coming up in a corner. And to continue to ask somebody to do, help me do this, and you kind of saw I needed help getting logged on to this. People used to always, I wouldn't even have to ask them and they would do it. And now you have to come out here and do stuff for yourself, bro. And I'm just saying that, being mindful of all the time that went by without me learning how to, 40 years of technology that passed me by. And now they get ready to change to something else. I'm like, oh my God, I better learn how to do this before they change to something else. I was like, oh, hit me back. So that's the kind of stuff that's running through my mind and helping people. I'm still working on shower works right next to my house. They had somebody move over there, the ex-felons. You know what I mean? They play their music pretty loud. So I had to go talk to them yesterday. And we met on equal grounds because I understood what they were saying and they understood what I was saying because I do work from home. I'm an artist. And I said, bro, and my wife works from home. I said, would you please, kind of keep your music down because I don't want to listen to the music you want to listen to. I prefer to listen to other music. Is that okay with you, sir? And he was receptive. He said, yeah, right away, man. And then he started telling me the problems he was having coming back to society, which was living, man, in everyday life. It's grand. And my worst day on the streets is better than my best day in prison. I have to say that. And
okay,
is there's anything I missed or you want to discuss with Gary, I'm an open book, or I will bring it to your attention. And thank you all very much for inviting me to participate in this endeavor. And they said the names of it, and I wrote down some names and things, but
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Let me see. Mr. Hunt, thank you.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for
Huh?
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your words. We have now question and answer. I have some question. So the first question I have for James. And I would appreciate if we could have like a short answer to the questions. So when we see your words, is kind of, you can see the patterns of like a dystopian world. You can see the revolts against the system. They are very political, and they're inviting to imagine a world where there is no subjectivity. Everything is shattered. The subjectivity of the folks is shattered. So how do you come up with this idea, James? And by the way, your work is one of the works that we always have question, and one of the pieces that is very well received by our visitors here.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. So in short, those works are informed by my research and personal experience with incarceration, state control, and in some cases, state terrorism. So those works are also informed by my readings, the works of Dostoevsky, Chekhov, the works of, the slave narratives of the United States, people that were in, my ancestors who were enslaved in the United States. And all those works that I researched from a literary point of view have to do with the deprivation of personhood, right? They're also influenced by psychological studies about incarceration, the Zimbardo studies. So, and again, coupled with my own personal and lived experience, able to create a drawing aesthetic that is reductive, that is not necessarily based in realism, reductive, all the way down to the simplest line, the simplest of elements. And that sort of mirrors the lived experience of the reductive life, coming into mass incarceration, being reduced from a person down to a number, a person down to a caricature of a human being, and also, and almost, I would say, a product. You know what I mean? Almost a package, a label, So, that is the short form of what informs that work.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you so much. We will conclude this session at 8:45 here in Prince George, and your time, most of the art is 11:45, so more like 8 more minutes. I have a question for Ashley. So when working on your film, I imagine you find yourself almost lost in the stories that your medium gives voice to. Is it all difficulty for you to separate yourself from the weight of what you become so involved in? Does the importance of your work and the people and the issues you are able to spotlight help outweigh the hardship you may face?
Thank you. That's a great question. I mean, I don't want to take up too much time, because in case there's a question for Gary as well. I'll just say quickly that, I mean, in terms of the issues we're talking about, there's a lot of things one can make work about, and as the question suggests, there's so many different stories to get lost in. And so one of the things I think about is what is it that's not being told in the same way, or that I don't see as much? And what is it that the particular vantage point that I have can speak differently to? And so, like, also in terms of the question asking about the hardships that I may face, I mean, I have not been incarcerated. I'm here more as an ally, as someone who's done work in this space to contribute to this work, but I don't come here as an incarcerated or formerly incarcerated person. And so it's important to clarify that I do not I don't think the hardships that I suffer compare to that, being in that state. And I approach this with a kind of privilege that it's always important for me to think about. And in that case, what are the tools? Teachers of mine have said, instead of just being paralyzed, though, what can you do with those tools that you have? And so that's what I try to figure out, what it is I can put those towards.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Thank you so much. I have the last question for Gary. Gary, are you working on anything currently that you can share with the audiences?
At this particular time, I'm sitting in front of a restaurant and I'm not at home, and I wish I could, but I don't have anything at this point right now. But I can email you. I'll email Steve something, the project I'm working on right now, and share that with you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Gary. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. And again, our apologies for technical issues tonight. Marking time, if you have not visited the exhibition, we have marking time at Turner's Gallery until October 6th. We have the closing reception at October 3rd at the University of Northern British Columbia, UNBC. Thank you so much again. Thanks for joining us. It's too late, and thanks again for joining. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thanks everyone
Thank
for
you.
participating and people for showing up. And Isan and Brianna, very nice job organizing. Thank you all for doing that lift.
Thank you.
Ashley, Gary, Yaya, always a joy to see you all. And I look forward to
Always.
in-person.
Appreciate you. I'm gonna
Thank
get that
you all.
in the mail.
Take good care.
All right, you do the same. God bless you all. And good night.
Bye.
Good night, guys.
Thank you, Gary. Take care.
Okay,
Thank
you
you
take
all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen.
Ashley.
Thank
Thank you, Nicole. You guys take good care.
Bye.
Okay, bye. It's hard
Bye-bye.
saying goodbye, huh?
you.
Bye. Love y'all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.